Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Webinar, the last one for the year, about unpacking the next round of stimulus, specifically aimed around opportunities for small businesses. We're going to go through some prepared slides, and then there will be plenty of time for questions. Please post, there are a lot of people on, so please post your questions in the Q&A only. A recording of this webinar and slides will be shared with you shortly after the show, so do not feel obligated to take notes. And so we will all be emailing a copy to everyone after the webinar. Briefly about myself, I am the founder and CEO of Multifunding since 2010. We have been helping business owners and entrepreneurs secure loans and working capital solutions to grow their businesses. I am a columnist, featured in the press, advised the White House, the Federal Reserve, and the Treasury Department on business credit markets, and have a book out called The Growth Dilemma. My lawyers asked me to read a few disclaimers. We are not acting as agents, packages, or brokers, and will not be able to help you get a loan placed with a specific lender or prepare or assemble PPP applications or documents for use in applications. That's not what we're doing here. We're here to educate you. We are in an unprecedented time in history, and the information available to us continues to change. The information provided is based upon our best judgment about what we know at this time and a decade of experience with SBA lending. However, key questions remain about how to implement these government programs. Multifunding LLC does not accept any liability as it relates to the timeliness or content of the information we are sharing today or may share in the future, and we are under no legal duty to update any such information or recommendations. We encourage you to check in with your attorneys, CPAs, and financial advisors for additional information and insights. There's a cloud over this entire discussion. 2 nights ago, while this bill has been signed and unanimously by a vast majority of Congresses in the House and the Senate have approved it, the president has threatened not to sign it. So we're not 100% sure exactly what's going to happen with any of this. That being said, we believe that most of the work in the small business areas will remain intact. And for that reason, we want to share the information with you as we know it today. We have some commitments to you that we've made and will continue to adhere to. We won't engage in speculation. We will only share the facts. If an answer is not clear, we're going to tell you that. And likely from experience, especially as these programs roll out, there are still many questions that are unclear. As soon as this webinar is done, we will share it with you and post it on YouTube so the information can be shared. And then we'll be going offline, at least for webinars, until there's meaningful new information to share again when new guidance information comes out. And then we will be back at you, letting you know that it's worthy to log on. Today's presentation focuses on 4 critical areas of the new legislation, specifically second draw PPP loans, overall changes to the PPP program, opportunities within the SBA program for businesses to take advantage of, and grants and EIDL loans. So let's begin. I want to be clear that there are specific niche elements of the legislation that we're not covering today, specifically related to farmers and ranchers, farm credit system institutions, eligibility of news organizations to participate, eligibility of 501c6 and destination marketing organizations, details about grants for shuttered venues, and extension of participation in 8A programs. This information is in the bill, but for choice of keeping everyone's brains focused, we're not going to spend much time on these little niche areas today. So let's dig into the PPP second draw loans. What are these? There will be opportunities for many businesses who are badly hit to take advantage and get a second PPP loan. To participate, you must be a business concern, a nonprofit, a housing cooperative, a veterans organization, a tribal business concern, an eligible self-employed individual, a sole proprietor, an independent contractor, or a small agricultural cooperative. You have to employ less than 300 people. That is a change. The last round of PPP was up to 500 people, and now it is up to 300 people. You have to have used the full amount, or will use the full amount of your PPP loan before you can get a second one of your first one. And this is important. You must have gross receipts during any quarter this year that will be at least 25% less than the same quarter in 2019. As an example, if your second quarter 2019 compared to your second quarter 2020, and there are provisions for other specific circumstances as well. So how much can you get? This is the lesser of, essentially your benefit is 2.5 times your average payroll cost of either your payroll in calendar year 2019 or 12 months from your application date, whichever is greater, with the maximum new PPP second draw loan amount of $2 million. So it is 2.5 times your average payroll costs for either calendar year 2019 or 12 months from your application date, with a cap of $2 million. If you are in the food or hospitality businesses, which is specifically NAICS Code 72, you can apply for and eligible for 3.5 times your average monthly payroll costs. If you are a seasonal employer, a new entity, or companies with more than one physical location, there are special rules and nuanced rules, but we won't go into those today. Who is not eligible for the program? If you are a publicly traded company, you are not eligible. If you are a political or lobbying activity, you are not eligible. If you're a business already ineligible for SBA loans, such as a business that engages in speculative activities, you're not eligible. There is an exception for nonprofits and religious organizations. They are eligible. And there are new rules around entities involved in different capacities with the People's Republic of China. How much money of this loan will be forgiven? The same rule applies that 60% needs to go to payroll costs and up to 40% to other expenses, but there are new expenses that can be counted now, and we'll go into them in a little bit, such as expenditures for worker protection expenditures, supplier costs, and property damage caused in the riots. There are new bankruptcy provisions. So if your company is in bankruptcy, if with the approval of the court, you can still get a PPP loan to help you through these times. I think the understanding here is that some companies, unfortunately, have had to file bankruptcy over the last few months. Now let's talk about the overall changes to the PPP program. This created some confusion yesterday. I want to be really clear. If your first loan has already been forgiven, you are not eligible for additional benefits. But let me explain that to you. You can still get a second PPP loan if your first loan is already forgiven. But let's say you got your first loan forgiven and only 80% of it was forgiven. And now you're saying, oh my gosh, they have these additional expenses that I could have applied for forgiveness. You cannot retroactively go back and change that application. However, irrespective of whether you've been already gotten for forgiveness, you are still eligible for a second PPP loan if you meet the revenue criteria. Just to be clear, I want to dig into a little bit the new additional expenses that are eligible for loan for forgiveness. These are tied to your operations, property damage costs, supplier costs, and worker protection expenditures. Operation expenditures such as processing of payments, HR services, sales and billing functions, accounting of tracking of supplies, inventory records and expenses, product or service delivery, business software or cloud computing solutions. These expenses can now be included in your forgivable expenses. If your business incurred damages during the vandals or looting that took place in 2020, you can apply for forgiveness for those amounts that were not covered by your insurance or other compensation. You can now apply for supplier costs for materials, goods, etc. You can apply these to your PPP forgiveness. and monies you spent on worker protection expenditures, such as gear to keep your workers safe, can be applied. And changes you made to your facility to add, say, a drive-through window or outdoor seating for a restaurant, physical barriers, etc. These can be added to your forgivable amount now. Your covered period for forgiveness, well, you will also have the same flexibility of choosing either 8 or 24 weeks. For those who got their first PPP or will get their second PPP for under $150,000, there is now a much simpler forgiveness application. You will submit a one-pager to your lender certifying a description of the number of employees that you were able to retain because of the covered loan, the estimated amount of the covered loan that you spent on payroll costs, and your total loan value. You attest that your certification is accurate, that you compiled with the requirements of the PPP loan, and that you'll retain the relevant records for 4 years. It is now a one-page simple application to submit to your lender for applications of PPP for forgiveness of under $150,000 or less. And now, in addition, this one specific group insurance payments can now be added as payroll costs. These specifically are group life, disability, vision, or dental insurance to eligible payroll costs. You're not eligible for a PPP loan if you were not in operation on February 15th, 2020, and there are exclusions for entities receiving shuttered venue operator grants that we'll describe later. This is a big issue for many people. There were a lot of questions around the taxability of the PPP for the first round, and now this will also apply to the second round. Business expenses paid with forgiven PPP funds are tax deductible, therefore considered non-taxable income. For the third section today, I want to talk about the changes to the SBA program. And pay careful attention here, because even if your business might not be eligible for the PPP because you didn't meet the revenue reduction thresholds, there are some incredible benefits with the SBA program that give you an opportunity to restructure your debt and hopefully lower monthly payments, and or possibly add growth capital that will help you hire and grow and take advantage of opportunities that have come up as a result of the pandemic. For those who already got already have an SBA loan, you should have received 6 months of payments forgiveness for your principal and interest last year or this year. You will receive an additional 3 months of this benefit next year, but the difference now is that there is a monthly cap on this benefit of $9,000. In addition, if you get a new SBA loan through September 30th, you will get 6 months of payment relief capped at $9,000 per month. This is through September 30th or when the program runs out of money, whichever is first. So if you want to try to take advantage of this, it's important to jump upon it now. The other nice thing is that this has changed. If you got your 6 months forgiven, or you'll get additional forgiveness this year, that is no longer considered taxable income, therefore an additional benefit to SBA borrowers. SBA Express loans, which are the SBA lines of credit, will remain as high as $1 million through September 30th and return to $500 after then versus the $350,000 that they have historically been. And SBA fees, which can be high, are waived through September 30th, 2021 on 7A, 504, and microloans. The government is creating a lot of incentives and encouragement for banks and business owners to take advantage of the SBA loans. This worked well in the Great Recession, and they're trying to do it again. There is also changing to some rules. The SBA 504 program is only for owner-occupied real estate and equipment, and now at low rates with low fees, you can refinance and secure at least 50% of your loan fixed at a low fixed rate for 20 or 25 years. Now let's talk about the grants and EIDL programs, loans, which I have to be honest, are the part of the program so far that it's more difficult to understand. There's a special element for grants for shuttered venue operators, for live venue operators, promoters of theatrical producers, independent movie picture theater operators, museum operators, or talent representatives that demonstrate a 25% drop in revenue. We're not going to dig too deep into that today. The EIDL loans are extended through December 30th to 2021. So if you have not already gotten one of those loans up to $150,000, or you did not get as much as $150,000, you could and should certainly consider applying for more. There's a duplication requirement for EIDL recipients. What this means is, in English, is you cannot double dip. You cannot use your PPP money for the same thing you use your EIDL money for, but you can use it for different things. And the nice thing is there's a repeal of the EIDL advanced deduction. Many of you may have taken advantage of the quick grant of up to $10,000 that was offered early on in COVID. But then you got a surprise when you went to go for your PPP forgiveness, because that grant suddenly became deducted from your PPP forgivable loan amount, and many people landed up with a small loan balance. That is now being repealed, and if you did land up in that situation and you already applied for forgiveness, there will be a procedure for your bank to retroactively rebate you that money. And there is an extension for the targeted EIDL advances for $10,000. And if you applied for the grant and didn't receive the full amount, sometimes early on there, you'd get $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 based on your number of employees. You will now be able to get the full 10. The SBA has given, the government has given the SBA 21 days instead of 3 days to disperse these funds. Any questions? Additional seminars will be announced as significant new information becomes available. We will email a copy of the slides to all participants, and we have a number of resources where folks can dig in. Now, the moderators will be happy to take your questions. Again, please put your questions in the Q&A only, and this will allow us to get through them more easily. Thank you.
Alrighty, to start off, are franchisees eligible for PPP this time?
I believe that franchisees would be eligible under the same rules, except for 300 employees or less instead of 500. And if there's a specific question about multiple locations, we would then need to dig into that offline.
All right. Will rent payments be covered if the ownership of the property separate entity the same as the landlord?
I don't know 100% for sure, but however, whatever guidance you got from your CPA or your accountant about that last time should apply again this time.
Will quarter-over-quarter loss include original PPP funding as income?
I don't think so.
How is gross receipts defined? Cash basis, accrual?
I'm going to assume it's cash basis.
I understand that the second draw is calculated by 2.5 times the monthly average payroll for 2019. What was the first draw calculated by?
Well, first of all, the draw can be either 2019 or the 12 months from the date of your application, whichever is more advantageous for you. The last draw was also 2.5 times, but I don't remember exactly when that started.
Do EIDL $10,000 grants in round 1 qualify for forgiveness?
Yeah, the EIDL loans now will be forgiven. It'll be a separate issue from your forgiveness application. Going forward, the EIDL advances will not be in your forgiveness application. They'll be grants as they were originally intended.
Second part of that question, can a borrower reapply if they already received forgiveness but were reduced by the $10,000 EIDL grant?
The way it's going to take some time, but you shouldn't have to reapply. Your bank should automatically send you a rebate check for that amount. And you should check in with your bank about that. Although give them a little time, they're trying to figure all this out.
To clarify, if we have not yet filed for forgiveness on our initial PPP, we can now claim new allowed expenses against our initial loan.
Correct. Again, everybody, assuming this bill passes.
Do we need to have already applied for our forgiveness for our first PPP loan to apply for a second one?
No.
Is the 150,000 simplified forgiveness process for PPP second draw loans only, or does it apply to PPP first draw loans as well?
It applies to both.
How is quarter defined to determine gross receipts? Any 3-month period, calendar quarter, or fiscal quarter?
I believe it will be calendar quarter. I think there'll be some clarification that on the guidance, but that's what the bill says.
What kind of documentation will they want to see regarding drop in revenues?
That's not clear. But my recommendation is, especially over the holidays while the banks are getting ready, you should get your financial statements ready in QuickBooks or however you do it. And you should reconcile them with your bank statements because they might ask for both.
Can a Coop building in New York City apply for a PPP loan? We lost our retail tenant and with that, all of the income that supports the building.
I'm not 100% sure because that building doesn't have any payroll expense unless it does. So I don't know what basis it would have for putting in an application.
Will we apply through our banks again?
Yes, but you don't have to use the same bank as you did last time. But it's probably a really good place to start. Whoever you got it from last time will hopefully support you the second time around.
When do the new SBA loan initiatives go into effect?
They should be in effect now and kick in within a few weeks.
Is any of this, including the SBA equipment loan, applicable to the cannabis industry?
No. Well, let me be clear. The SBA benefits are not applicable to the cannabis industry. I'm not sure how that holds for PPP and EIDL. I don't know the answer to that.
Are EIDL monies a grant or have to be paid back?
There are two pieces. The up to $10,000 is a grant. The up to $150,000 is a loan and has to be paid back over a long period of time.
Do we know when the one-page application for under 150,000 will be published?
Probably, I'm going to guess it'll take a couple weeks and then it'll be ready. But first it has to be published by the SBA and then the banks have to figure out how to implement it and roll it out.
How do previous PPP funds affect the negative 25% revenue calculation for eligibility for the new PPP program?
They should have no impact at all.
Does the 2019 payroll requirement include your independent contractors?
No, independent contractors are separate, just like last time. They are not included.
Is there any benefit if I started a business in Q3 of 2020?
There are no benefits in the PPP program. I don't think there are any benefits in the EIDL program. You might be eligible for some SBA loans depending on how you're doing. and what your needs are.
How are the 300 employees measured? Headcount versus full-time employees?
You need to go back to the specific guidance of how they were measured last time, and the same rules should apply.
Just to be clear, can you not apply for an EIDL loan if you received 150,000 back in June?
You can't, well, as of right now, it's not 100% clear to us how the new EIDL loans will be granted. If the $150,000 limit is going to stick, or they're going to increase it. So my assumption right now is if you got the full 150, you're done, but that could change.
To be clear, the loan amount is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, correct?
Correct, but with the same calculation you did last time. So there were like exclusions for anyone who earned more than $100,000. Their benefit came down to $100,000.
What was the criteria that determined whether PPP is 2.5 or 3.5 times payroll?
The only time it's 3.5 is if you have an NAICS code 72, which means you're in the food or hospitality business.
What are the requirements to get an EIDL loan?
I, I don't know 100% sure because they really made them much lighter, and it's not clear to me that they changed them this time. So I think we're going to be back at you guys in January with more information about the EIDL program as it becomes available.
On the current PPP forgiveness between 150,000 to 2 million, are there any adjustments to make it simplified for those to apply?
No,
Is the PPP calculation still based on salary costs, or will there be an opportunity to include operational expenses?
based on salary cost.
Debt service payments to be made by SBA, is it 6 months relief for those SBA loans made after 9/30/2020 and 3 months for loans made before 9/30/2020?
At 9/30/20, it's 3 months for any loans on the books now that got 6 months previously, or currently in the middle of getting 6 months because they got one as of September 30th. Anyone who got that benefit or is in the middle of getting that benefit will get an additional 3 months or until the program runs out of money. And any new SBA loans will then get 6 months. However, keep in mind that there's a monthly cap of $9,000, which is still a lot. That could be a big SBA loan. And keep in mind that this benefit is until the program runs out of money. So if you want to take advantage of this sooner rather than later, it might not be available through the end of September.
For loans already forgiven where EIDL advances were withheld from PPP forgiveness, when will the SBA reimburse the EIDL advance that they withheld? The bank is already billing me for the 10,000 that was withheld.
I think hopefully within the next several weeks, the bank is going to have some paperwork to get through to figure out how to handle all of that. It's not going to come from the SBA, it will likely come from the bank.
I'm trying to get a loan to pay off existing debt. Would it make sense to get an SBA guarantee loan? It appears the one I'm being offered is not SBA.
It could make a lot of sense, and I would encourage everybody to think about refinancing your debt if you can get one and taking advantage of the SBA loan because you can take all your existing debt and get up to about $1 million of it, and you can get a 5% haircut with the 6 months of free payments.
If we did not apply for EIDL, can we apply now and get the $10,000 advance as a grant?
That is my understanding. But again, I want to be clear to everybody that the part of the bill that's still the most confusing to us is about the EIDL and the grants and how they work and who will get them and the limits and the maximums, the eligibility. So that is the part of the bill that is still most gray for us.
What is the maximum EIDL grant for a sole practitioner?
The maximum grant should be $10,000. However, it's not clear to me if by being a sole practitioner instead of a business, just being a sole practitioner might limit that amount.
Are payroll salaries capped at 100,000 per year again?
Correct. All of that, none of that should change.
What are your thoughts on the Main Street lending program? When does that end?
It's done. It was a tough program. If you got one, you're very lucky. Our company worked feverishly. We got about a dozen of them done for clients. But as of December 31st, that program is done. However, for those who were thinking about the Main Street lending program, you might be able to replace that with an SBA program, and it's worth having a conversation about that and thinking about that. Could the SBA do something similar for you that the Main Street was going to do? Banks have a lot of incentives now to make SBA loans.
If we received a $3,000 EIDL grant, we can reapply for up to 10,000?
Yeah, that's my understanding, but it's not clear to us exactly who's eligible for that and exactly when that's going to be open. So stay tuned for more information.
We already got PPP loan forgiveness. Are we now eligible for a new PPP loan?
You are, as long as you meet the threshold of the 25% reduction in your gross receipts 1 quarter this year compared to 1 quarter last year.
What SBA loan program supports inventory?
Well, any one of the 7A, the SBA Express, or the SBA Cap Line program might support inventory. It really depends on what's going on with your business, what your cash flow is, and what your needs are. And that would have to be looked at on an individual basis. We will also be preparing seminars for January for everyone to really detail how to possibly take advantage of these new SBA benefits, help you understand what the process looks like of restructuring your debt, leveraging your assets, trying to get long-term financing with the SBA, and take advantage of the 6 months of reduced payments. That information will be coming to you in much more detail in January, and we'll be sharing that.
If we didn't get PPP the first time around, do you recommend applying ourselves or through the bank or another resource?
Well, the question is why you didn't get PPP. So it'd be better to understand why. And if you want to reach out to us offline, we'd be happy to try to help you figure that out.
Can you elaborate a bit on the difference in uses / best applications for EIDL versus 7A versus 504?
So EIDL is an emergency grant related to a disaster. A 7A or a 504 is an ordinary SBA loan that are granted in good times and bad times. They're not granted, it's a loan, and you have to apply and go through underwriting and pass cash flow. Those can go as high as for working capital, partner buyouts, or acquisitions, $5 million, and for real estate projects, $12.8 million, versus the EIDL loans that maximum right now at $150,000. So they're very different programs. And again, we'll be happy, and we will be doing a lot of educating about the SBA 7A and 504 and the cap lines to the community starting in January, so people can understand potentially how to take advantage of those loan programs.
Is the cloud computing expense allowable for forgiveness for PPP first round as part of non-payroll costs?
It is, as long as you haven't already gone through their forgiveness application. But if you haven't applied yet, it is.
Can you clarify the rule if you can qualify for an SBA, you're not eligible for PPP?
That's not what I said. If you cannot qualify for an SBA, not qualify if you're not eligible for an SBA because of your industry type, then you're not eligible for a PPP unless you're a religious organization or a nonprofit, which can't get regular SBA loans.
Can you talk a bit more about how to handle our 2020 accounting? Do we get to keep the expenses as valid expenses in this year?
I'm not sure I 100% understand your question. I think so, but that's something you should check with your CPA. I'm not a CPA or a tax person. I'm a loan. My gig is loans.
If we have a new SBA loan that was closed in November 2020, a 7A that is that eligible for 6 months of principal and interest payments?
No, I believe you're caught in a funny spot and you will get 3 months. But that's not 100% clear how that's going to work, but that's what I think.
Do you know how the PPP works for businesses with 0 full-time employees and where the owners receive a salary classified as distributions?
I think I don't know 100% sure, but whatever rules applied for that scenario last time will apply again this time.
Real estate investment firms traditionally prohibited from receiving SBA loans, but I believe this was waived for Code 72 hotels in first round of PPP loans. Will that continue for the second round?
I believe so, correct.
Do you have any details on what having used the first PPP money means? What if some was used for debt consolidation and we still have a large cash buffer on hand in the end?
I think there's going to be further guidance on that, but technically the way the rules now, if you haven't used that money or had incurred expenses for that money for eligible expenses, you're not eligible to apply for a second round.
Do you expect to see the same mad rush / chaos with banks as we saw in the first round?
I'm hoping it'll be a little calmer this time because uh, it applies to less businesses, but it's still fairly chaotic. And there's still going to be a lot of clarity questions and rules and new processes and people upset. And realistically, I can't see, assuming the bill gets signed soon, I can't see money hitting the street till mid to late January at the earliest.
If we did not receive the full 10,000 EIDL advance because we didn't have 10 employees, can we now go back and apply for the difference?
That is, again, our understanding, but that might be subject to only certain populations being able to get that, and that will become clearer in the next few weeks.
Will the first and second round of PPP still require 2 applications for forgiveness, or will the loans be consolidated into a single forgiveness application?
I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess that it'll be 2 applications for forgiveness.
Is there any type of revenue reduction requirement to allow for the tax deductibility for expenses associated with the first PPP?
That's something you should check with your CPA. I don't think so, but might be slightly above my pay grade.
Is the $2 million max in PPP loans per borrower or per affiliated group?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to assume it's the same rules as last time, but that's something we have to check into.
Can I get a PPP loan if I also received a Main Street loan?
There should be no connection, and congratulations on getting a Main Street loan. That was not an easy thing to do.
When do you think the new PPP second draw program will be up and running?
Mid to late January.
When do you think the new SBA rules will be in place?
Within a few weeks.
What are the lender fees?
Again, everyone, I'm sorry. I keep hating to say it, but this is all contingent upon this bill being signed.
What are the lender fees associated with the new PPP program?
The lenders can't charge the borrowers anything. And in terms of the lender fees that the government gets, the government will compensate the lenders. I've read it, but because this presentation is not for lenders, I don't know exactly what they are off the top of my head.
What is the interest rate for SBA loans?
That depends if it's an SBA 7A or a 504. The 7A is the working capital partner buyouts acquisition product that is traditionally done at prime plus 2 3/4, which currently is 6%. The real estate loans are hovering somewhere on the 504 or hovering somewhere lower than 3% right now.
Can you use your freight cost from suppliers for part of the 40% forgiveness?
I believe that is correct.
If we received the full EIDL amount already, but filed too late to receive the $10,000 grant, can we apply for this grant now?
Again, I think so, but that is the area that I feel most uncertain about. And so we're going to have to provide a lot more clarity on that in January.
Our bank processed the forgiveness application, but SBA has not yet funded, more than 3 months old now. Is this a SBA problem processing?
Most likely, but you should check in with your bank about that. Has your bank already sent it to the SBA? How are we doing, Megan? Are we getting close to the end?
Slowly. For the 25% reduction of revenue, can it be used for certain sale channels or the entire company?
I'm going to believe that it'll be the entire company.
Is there a list of banks working with MWBE?
I'm not sure what MWBE stands for. Minority Women Business Enterprises? That's my guess. There has to be a list somewhere. I'm just not sure where it is.
Will the $2 million maximum loan amount be reduced by previous PPP loans received?
Should have no connection to it.
May a business be owner receive compensation under the PPP program?
Whatever the rules were last time will be applied this time.
Did you say 2.5 times 2019 payroll or 2020 payroll?
It is either 2.5 times 2019 payroll or 12 months trailing from the date of your application.
Is partial SBA forgiveness open to existing SBA loans opened prior to the pandemic?
I'm not sure I understand that question. If someone wants to re-clarify that, I'll be happy to try answer again.
For the new PPP, if you use 2019's average monthly payroll to calculate the loan amount, do you still use the same full-time employee count that you use for the first, or do you use the full-time employee count as it stands now?
That will come out in further guidance. I don't know the answer to that yet.
My revenue dropped only one quarter in 2020, then bounced back. I already applied and received a PPP loan based on that quarter. Can I apply again to subsidize payroll or expenses for other quarters?
Should be no issue as long as that revenue drop was at least 25% quarter over quarter. It's not clear to me if there will be another. So it's clear that it's 25% drop one quarter over other quarter. Will there be another stipulation in there or attestation that you need the money to continue business operations? We don't know that yet. And if there will, that might give people pause if they had a bad second quarter, but then they've rebounded and done great.
Is the partial SBA forgiveness available to loans opened prior to 2020?
Yes, as long as it's an SBA loan.
Just to clarify, what is the maximum EIDL grant for the sole practitioner with only one employee himself?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if the $10,000 is eligible for a sole practitioner. We'll find out, but I'm not sure.
If I acquire a business effective 12/31/20, will I be able to use the payroll and other expenses from the former entity in submitting a loan, the second draw PPP loan?
I think it depends if you do that as an asset sale or a stock sale. So if it's a brand new company or if it's an old company that's continuing.
If a business did not receive the full $10,000 EIDL grant, can it reapply to get the full 10,000?
That is my understanding, but it's not clear to me if that's for every business or only specific, say, underprivileged, minority, veterans, etc. I don't know for sure. I think that's going to come out and become clearer.
We had an 80% revenue decrease in Q2 2020, but managed to increase revenues to less than a 25% loss compared to 2019 in Q3 and 4. Can we still apply for the new PPP round?
That should be no problem.
What month will the 3-month forgiveness for the SBA loans 504 begin?
I'm going to guess in February or March. Some of that's going to be depending how quickly the banks can roll it out.
We started business in August 2020. Are we eligible for PPP loan?
No,
If you applied for EIDL and did not get the grant, only the loan, can you get the grant without an additional loan?
again, possibly, but a lot of that's going to become clearer over the next few weeks.
What about the employee retention credit enhancements? Can those with a PPP loan now get payroll tax credits in addition?
You have to check that with your CPA. I'm sorry, it's not my thing.
For the first round of PPP, there was a lot of uncertainty from the banks on the process of taking applications. Should we apply for the second round through multiple platforms and see which one is processed first, or just go with the bank that secured the first PPP?
I think it'll be like, I think some of that's going to depend how this all plays out, and we're not 100% sure. I think it'll likely be easier for you to get this done with the bank that did your first one, but that doesn't mean that all banks that did them the first time might not choose to participate again. Banks aren't required to do this. So I think some of that is just going to depend.
Is there new documentation required for the second round of PPP?
I'm sure there will be, and I'm sure they are burning the midnight oil in SBA offices around the country right now, trying to figure out how that's all going to work.
When do you recommend we apply? We were told we were getting money from the EIDL last summer, then never got it, and were told the money ran out.
Well, the EIDL money should be reinstated. So I would say, first of all, this bill's got to pass. Hopefully that will. And then I would get on it as soon as it becomes open. And we'll be informing everyone through our community sites about when all that is.
We received PPP for the first round and would be eligible for round 2 based on the criteria. We had a negative EBITDA for 2019, yet we are currently in a good cash position. Is there a need basis in the proposed second PPP round?
All we know today is that it states that it's based on a gross receipts drop 1/4 this year versus 1/4 last year. If they will add additional criteria to it in the guidance, we don't know, but based on what we know right now, you should be fine.
A client of mine received a grant directly deposited into their account. What documentation do they need as to how they spend the funds?
I don't know the answer. I'm sorry.
If we didn't get a PPP loan the first round, can we this round?
Yes, but you wouldn't technically get a second round one. You could go get a first round one still.
And that is all our questions.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you to Megan for doing such a great job moderating. Thank you for Kate, who's quietly sitting in the background helping her. Thank you to all of you. I want to wish you all a very happy holiday season. Sometime today, you will get a copy of this presentation and a recording of it. Feel comfortable to share that with friends and colleagues. And we'll be back at you with additional information and webinars that we will be providing in January as soon as more information becomes available. I know it's a tough time for everybody. I hope everyone has a good holiday season. And at Multifunding, we look forward to continue to work with you through 2021 to be any help that we can provide. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care now.